Folks, thank you for taking the time today. Let's get the show on the road. I see people are still joining now, but we'll let them catch up. I want to give you a quick overview of the agenda today. I want to introduce the speakers in the panel today, an overview of Platform9, our solution, Platform9 Managed OpenStack. And we want to spend most of our time today actually talking about how we made OpenStack seamlessly integrate with vSphere, why you may want that, what problems does it solve, what are some architectural details of how this has been built. We have 3 demos, a live demo, 2 recorded sequences. I want to talk about interoperability in particular, which I think is a key issue, especially for VMware customers who are thinking about OpenStack and certain advanced automation scenarios. So we have a lot of ground to cover, so let's get this started. I want to just get a couple of logistics questions out of the way. Please do ask your questions anytime. You can ask us on Twitter at Platform9sys. You can also use the chat panel on GoToWebinar. And again, we'd love to take your questions as you have them. We want this to be interactive and valuable to you. So don't be shy. Any questions, fair game. Twitter or chat panel. Look forward to hearing them. The second logistics that I want to share was, thank you for taking the time to attend today. If you'd like our cool Platform9 jacket, just send us your size, male size, female size, and just tweet us or email us at connect@platform9.com, and we'd be happy to send one over to you. Okay, with that said, let's get this started. My name is Sirish Raghuram. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Platform9. Before starting Platform9, I was an engineer at VMware for 12 years. I helped build many of the products that are well known in the VMware portfolio. And we also have Kenneth Hui. Ken is Director of Technical Marketing at Platform9. He has come to us after a long tenure at EMC, Rackspace, VCE, and he has a lot of context on the private cloud space, not just from a VMware point of view, but also an OpenStack and an OpenStack VMware integration point of view. Ken is very passionate about containers, OpenStack, virtualization, and how all of this evolves together over the next 3 to 4 years is something that fascinates him personally. We also have on the panel today Amrish Kapoor. Amrish is our lead software engineer who architected our support for VMware vSphere, and he comes to us most recently from Microsoft, where he led multiple technical teams. And Amrish is currently based in Salt Lake City, but we're delighted to be having him join us in the headquarters very soon. There's a question on whether we will be, it's from Manish. Manish, thanks for the question. Wondering if you will be covering anything from network virtualization integration with Platform9. I do want to give you a sneak peek, Manish. I think that's a topic in itself. We definitely have an upcoming webinar, either later in Q3 or early in Q4, dedicated to that. But I will touch upon that briefly, and thank you for asking the question. So with that said, I do have a very, very quick question. I'd love to know and make this presentation as relevant to you as possible. If you could kindly take a survey, we would be able to tailor the content that in a way that's most appropriate to you. We're just going to run this for 1 minute. If you can share your insights into how do you streamline provisioning of applications and workspaces on top of your VMware vSphere environment? How do you provide a developer self-service solution for your vSphere environment? And it could very well be that you haven't had it, don't really need it, or you have it and you have plans, or you've used certain products in the space. I think it would allow us to tailor the content a little more to you, not only today's content, but also the content that we have coming up. I know half of you have already voted, so thank you so much for taking those quick survey. And as soon as I get a few more votes in, we'll actually move on to the rest of the presentation. Again, thank you for sharing this insight. I think it just lets us have this tailored to your environment in a way that makes more sense to you. So the survey is 3/4 of you have voted. 15% or 13% haven't had and don't really need a self-service solution. More than 30% are looking to implement one, and the remaining have used are looking at one of the other solutions as the solution of choice. So thank you for the votes. I'm going to pull the survey now, and let's get the presentation going with that. So very quick overview of Platform9, folks. I'll be very quick through this. So we were founded in 2013 by early VMware engineers. We are based in Sunnyvale in the state of California. We have a small office in Salt Lake City and New York. We are now generally available for VMware vSphere. That's a big part of today's presentation, is talking about how we made it available for vSphere. The service has been available for KVM customers since January of this year. The company is backed by Redpoint Ventures and Menlo Ventures. Just a couple of days back, we disclosed a second round of funding that's led by Menlo Ventures with full participation from Redpoint. So early days, we have a long way to go, but it's a very, very exciting start for us. And we have customer deployments globally in just 2 quarters of sales. So with that said, what is the problem that we solve? The problem that we solve is that software developers everywhere want cloud infrastructure. And in the enterprise, these virtualized assets that every enterprise tends to have are very hard to turn into a private cloud that the software development community within the enterprise can really leverage the way they want to. So these clouds are difficult to install and tune for production. They're hard to operate, which means that projects are often running. We met customers who have had vRealize Automation Center and have spent anywhere between a minimum of 4 months to a maximum of 18 months trying to really get to production with it. And I think OpenStack is very similar, where you need a certain level of skill set to be able to operationalize it well. And if you don't have it, your project can really stall. And with OpenStack in particular, there's some concerns around how well it integrates with existing environments. You do want a solution that doesn't require you to retool all of your existing investments, but rather amplifies it and works with it. And one other concern that we've seen from customers is that there isn't support for multiple or diverse virtualization platforms. And what that may mean is that customers feel that they're locked into islands, right? It may not be that at any given point in time you want to use 5 different platforms, but what you want is flexibility. As new and emerging technologies are arriving, for example, Docker, a lot of the software development community is very excited about Docker and how to leverage that. But from an IT operations point of view, it's a challenge because people are looking for solutions that help them manage a VMware environment, maybe a KVM environment, and now introducing Docker. So those are the kinds of challenges that we've seen from our customers. So we started Platform9 to make private clouds easy for the enterprise at any scale, right? Essentially, you can go to the public cloud today, you can go to Amazon Web Services today, sign up and get started and get to production in minutes. But you cannot do that with the public cloud before Platform9. And that's the reason we started Platform9. We want to make it as simple and easy to use private cloud infrastructure as it is to use the public cloud. And essentially, you can think of us as an Amazon-like management fabric that happens to work with your infrastructure and is based on OpenStack. And that's exactly what our solution is. So Platform9 Managed OpenStack is OpenStack that's delivered as a SaaS fabric, very similar to how Amazon's fabric is, but it happens to work instead of Amazon servers, it happens to work with your enterprise servers, which host your data, and they're within your control, and they're within your security perimeter. And all we do is that we make it really easy to get to production and run in production, right? So the value proposition that Platform9 has is that we make things easy. It's all based on OpenStack Juno today. We'll be upgrading to Liberty in about 6 months' time, and that's the core of it. So the key benefits are, of the solution is it's very, very easy to get up and running. It's completely managed. It's not just the OpenStack software, but the full operational support and lifecycle support around it. So Platform9 owns the SLA for your OpenStack layer. Contractually, that's what we sign. So we are responsible for monitoring the health of your OpenStack environment, for troubleshooting it, for upgrading it when there's a patch release that we need to upgrade or to a newer release. We do all of that for you. That's essentially the key benefit to our customers. I want to talk about the focus of today's call is about how this is now available for VMware vSphere. So it's a very exciting thing for us because Platform9 was founded by early engineers from VMware who built VMware vSphere. And we think that vSphere is a fantastic platform for IT operations, and it's missing a couple of pieces that help it really, I think, transform into a private cloud. There's a question from Steve. Does Platform9 compete with Cisco's OpenStack offering? And Steve, I would say that Platform9 is an OpenStack solution, and customers would often not deploy multiple OpenStack solutions. So technically all the OpenStack distributions compete, but the way they have different philosophies, they're packaged differently, they have different strengths and weaknesses. So depending on what you're looking for, one distribution may be better for you than the other. And I'm happy to share some insights as we go along today in terms of how Platform9 is differentiated. But technically, all of the OpenStack distributions at some level compete, but we're all part of the OpenStack Foundation, where I think we're trying to bring a DevOps culture and DevOps enablement to the enterprise. So Platform9's integration for vSphere has been in beta starting January of this year. So it's been a 7-month-long beta. We've had 10 participants across several different industries in the US and Europe. And we've been very excited with the validation that we've had across these different verticals. It has been tested at scale. It has been tested across geographically distributed infrastructure. It has been tested with different use cases, some who are more looking at a self-service and automation point of view, some who are looking at streamlining VM provisioning and reducing sprawl. So it's been a fantastic beta program for us. I want to talk, before going into the integration that we've done with VMware, I want to talk about the use cases. Why would you want to use OpenStack with vSphere? And in the end, I'd like to actually hear the audience's thoughts on why you may want to use OpenStack. But one big one that comes up is that it lets you really streamline VM provisioning. So it has a central library of images. It has VM flavors, which let you consistently centrally define and manage the resource allocation policies for VMs, the CPU, the memory, the disk sizes, but also the resource policies in terms of what are the different zones of infrastructure that you have, the different types of hardware that you have, and which users and workloads have access to what infrastructure. So some level of policy-based management. And that's managed in OpenStack via flavors. There's tenant users, there's groups of users, there's tenants, there's actual individual users, being able to map them to tenant organizations. There's quotas, and these users then can come in and have self-service access, which many organizations find is what helps them accelerate development processes, right? Software development agility is often tied to how quickly can developers get things done, and streamline VM provisioning, but also being able to surface that with policy controls to self-service users, the software development organization. That tends to be a huge issue. The ability to deploy modern scale-out applications, right? Applications that are a little different from traditional applications in that they don't just scale up, but they also scale out. And being able to have the placement controls that you want in deploying such applications, being able to orchestrate not just the provisioning of those applications, but integrating those into a service tier that you may have, and then hooking them up with load balancers. That lifecycle automation is a common pattern with, say, scale-out applications, and OpenStack has a lot of built-in support for applications that are in that pattern. And then there's the unified management of multiple hypervisors, or it could be that some customers want more vendor neutrality, want to be more, have the flexibility to change their virtualization platforms over time, and not necessarily change what exists, but maybe add a new tier for certain new types of applications that may be running on KVM or Docker. So these are the kinds of use cases that we've seen from our customers. At the end of the presentation today, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what actually resonates. How do you view OpenStack? What do you think is OpenStack's value to your organization, and in the context of the pain points that you see? So again, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask, but I want to actually take some time and dive into the architecture. Before that, let me quickly show you Platform9 in action. I have a few live environments here. So in the live environment, what you're seeing on the left, the leftmost Chrome tab, is Platform9's internal deployment of Platform9. So we use our own product to run all of our dev test workloads and our continuous integration pipeline. So these are servers that are running Linux, they're running CentOS and Ubuntu. They're mapped into different tiers of infrastructure that are used for different levels of service. There's networks that are used here, detected from the servers that already exist. There's a virtual machine image library. That's a centralized library that our continuous integration system builds into. You can download pre-built images from a curated set of public images that are available. From there, you can deploy instances. You see at any given time, it varies between as few as 50 to as many as 500 instances that are running, depending on how many tests have launched recently. And you can manage volumes and snapshots. You can configure security access into this environment. You can manage VM flavors. Flavors specify the resource configurations for all of your VMs that are provisioned into this environment, and then decide which users have access. Here are the users in our system. Here are the tenants. Who are the users that have access, and what are the roles, respective roles, and the quotas that they have. In other words, this is very similar to what a cloud infrastructure looks like. This is all OpenStack based. It's based on OpenStack Juno. It's all API, all the APIs are available, right? And it's very similar to, I think, if you used Amazon Web Services, you'd find this instantly familiar. What we do is we make that really easy to get there. And I want to talk a little bit about the architecture for integrating Platform9 OpenStack, Managed OpenStack with vSphere, and then go back and do a live demo of actually pairing a VMware environment with OpenStack. Okay, so in a typical organization, you have server virtualized infrastructure that's running clusters, data stores, vSwitches, virtual machines, templates. A lot of this already exists. And with vSphere, generally our experience has been that it's a fantastic tool from an IT operations point of view. But I absolutely think that there's a ton of value there that OpenStack is not going to be able to replace in the near term. Things like vMotion storage, vMotion, storage IO controls, DRS, fault tolerance, HA. These are all extremely valuable capabilities from an operations point of view. But the missing link is the inability to surface all of this infrastructure into a private cloud for the customers within the organization. If you think about software developers today, in grad school, they learn how to use cloud infrastructure. Often they're learning how to use Amazon Web Services. Now they go join the workforce and they want to have an access to an infrastructure that's very similar. And that's the challenge, right? How do you take this vSphere infrastructure that is so powerful from an IT operations point of view and enable access of that infrastructure as a cloud infrastructure to the development community? And that's exactly what we do at Platform9. We bring in OpenStack as a seamless overlay on top of your existing vSphere environment, and it essentially integrates with vSphere via a stateless virtual appliance. We call that the vSphere gateway. That gateway is nothing but a virtual appliance running CentOS, which has the Platform9 agent loaded on it, and that agent essentially comes up and queries the vCenter public API. It queries the clusters, the data stores, the networks, the VMs, and the templates. And it uses that metadata and it surfaces that metadata up to the OpenStack controller. So now the OpenStack controller is starting to see the information around the compute capacity, storage capacity, network capacity, and the VMs and templates that exist. And that in turn fleshes out the OpenStack view. What I just showed you live with the Platform9 controller, essentially that view is fleshed out once you start getting this metadata from the VMware environment underneath it. And that in turn lets IT and operations come in and manage this environment and make it self-service and automatable by defining policies and quotas and users and groups and defining tiers of service, the host aggregates capability and flavors and which users have access to what. And that in turn is what enables end users to come in, often these are software developers, to come in and deploy applications very quickly with the policy controls that IT operations has set up. So these provisioning operations can be done through the UI, as you may have seen in the UI, but they can also be, very importantly, automated using the OpenStack CLIs, the OpenStack REST APIs, and all the toolkits that are compatible with the OpenStack REST APIs. So think about Puppet and Chef and Salt and Ansible, and think about libcloud for Python and jcloud for Java and Fog for Ruby. All of those libraries are already compatible with the OpenStack API, and that's exactly what can be used to be automating your provisioning pipeline, your continuous deployment pipeline via OpenStack. And when those operations are deployed, are performed, they're orchestrated onto your vSphere environment. So Platform9 itself doesn't have your data. It doesn't have your virtual machine disk images. It doesn't have your virtual machines. It is just serving as an orchestration layer on top of your existing vSphere resources. So those vSphere resources are essentially being now transformed into a private cloud by orchestrating these operations on behalf of the user. Question from Manish, is the gateway an appliance? And yes, Manish, it is an appliance. I want to do a demo for you. You'll see it in action. And another question from Manish is, how will it traverse the command between the platforms using the REST API? So Manish, the gateway itself, all it does is it works with the vCenter API, and it communicates back with the OpenStack controller services using internal tools. So the gateway is not something that end users see. The API that's exposed by Platform9 is actually the OpenStack REST API, right? And that's exposed by the OpenStack controller layer. And so the transposition, right, the conversion between the vSphere view and the OpenStack view is done by Platform9's controller, along with, in conjunction with the OpenStack, the vSphere gateway that we have. So in this architecture, the key thing that I want to point out is that a lot of times people get concerned about the complexity of running OpenStack, and that's the beauty of Platform9 solution, which is that all of the persistence and the updates and the scalability, the monitoring, the HA, the SLA for your OpenStack layer is provided by Platform9 as part of its service. And the gateway itself is essentially stateless and disposable. It's lightweight, it's stateless. You can destroy a gateway, download and deploy a new one, and the system would be in exactly the same state, almost as if nothing happened, because it's stateless, lightweight by design. The state is either being persisted into the vCenter environment where the VMs are actually being provisioned, or in the OpenStack control plane where it's all managed and backed up nightly and made highly available for you. So that's the design. I'd love to take questions that you may have, but I think the proof is actually seeing this live. I want to show, this is actually a Platform9 deployment for VMware. And here we have a VMware 5.1 deployment that is running in our labs. It's an internal deployment. What I have done is I have actually, when you get started with Platform9, when you get your account, there's a wizard that walks you through process 1 to 5. And what I have done here is I've gone in and I've actually downloaded this gateway in the interest of time. This is the gateway, the appliance that I was talking about. So this appliance I have downloaded, it's an OVF appliance, and I've deployed that into the vSphere gateway. And in the interest of completeness, I'll actually come back and show you what that actually looks like as well. But once you do that, essentially the gateway binds with the vCenter server. So in this case, it's a vCenter server we are running internally, and it comes back and asks for authorization. So when you go into the authorization view, you see that there's a newly added vCenter gateway that's awaiting authorization. So let's go ahead and authorize it. Now you're seeing the clusters. These are the vSphere clusters that are in vCenter that the gateway has queried via the vCenter API, and it's asking us to authorize these clusters for use with Platform9. So unless you authorize it, this capacity won't be used by Platform9 in orchestrating your solution. But once you authorize it, that's when you're allowing the gateway to say, okay, go ahead and perform a deeper discovery of the compute, the network, the storage, and the VM images and the artifacts that are available on these resources, and then come back and orchestrate it via the OpenStack layer. So Manish has a question. Can I get the slides and this video to view it offline? The answer is yes. We post the slides on SlideShare. The videos are actually on our website as well, so you should be able to look at it. Ron has a question. Can the appliance run on a vSphere VM? So Ron, the appliance is a vSphere OVF. So I'll show you how you actually deploy it, but it is actually a vSphere VM. Now, can you run it in a nested manner? I think the answer is yes, but you should know what you're doing with nested virtualization, but the answer is yes. But I'll show you what it actually looks like. So we'll come back and take a look at this live environment that we kicked off in a little bit. I have a recorded sequence that I want to show you, that I want to show you what the workflow looks like in terms of being able to see the OVF deployment process. So let me get this. Let me show you the process of actually deploying the gateway. When you deploy the gateway, you download the virtual appliance from the vSphere gateway page, and then you go into your vCenter view, and you essentially say deploy OVF. It's very simple, right? It's not rocket science. You do it, vSphere admins, you're very familiar with doing this all the time. Once you deploy it, you select your resources, the storage and network information where you want it to go. You want to put this gateway on a location where it has outbound HTTPS access to your Platform9 controller. You can configure the proxy server that it has to work with, and you can bind it to the vCenter server that it should integrate with. When you do that, essentially the gateway will have that information. When it comes up after that, it will go ahead and integrate with the vCenter API, and then go back over the internet to your Platform9 account, which, by the way, is not shared with any other customer. And that allows the integration to take place. That's how the gateway deploys, integrates with your vCenter server, goes out over the network via any proxy server that you may have configured, and reports to the Platform9 controller. So let's go back and take a look at the live environment. This process usually takes about 3 minutes live. We should have been done by now, and just refresh the UI. So if you remember, I'd requested the authorization of 2 clusters. These clusters have been authorized. You can now see the compute and memory and storage and network utilization. If you go back into vSphere, if you look at the clusters that we had authorized, these will all match up, right? So the cluster that we had picked were VMware Test and VMware Dog Food. So let me go into the VMware Dog Food cluster, and you see these are the utilization statistics that we have in vSphere. It's a 36 gigahertz cluster. It has some amount of storage capacity, and that's exactly what you see here. You can also see the allocation of capacity and the networks that are available. So these are the networks that have been provisioned in vSphere, and these networks have been discovered by the Platform9 gateway and have been integrated into OpenStack as networks. So that's how seamless it is, right? We just did this live, and not only the networks and the compute and the resources, but also the virtual machine templates. These virtual machine templates have been discovered from the VM templates that you already have. They're now presented as OpenStack glance images, and now the virtual machine instances that you have are also being discovered, right? So that's how simple it is, right? Or because it's a pure metadata-based design, it reflects the state of your underlying vSphere infrastructure, and it surfaces it up through the OpenStack APIs. And you're essentially now, all you need to do is add your users and your tenants, and you're good to go, right? That's literally how easy it is. So we'll come back. I know there's a few questions that are pending up, but let's go back in and take a look at some of the questions. Again, we are happy to take more questions offline. I know we have some time limits today, but the first question was from Manish. Let's say that the ESX server hosting the appliance is not reachable excuse me, and has no HA configured. The question is what happens in that scenario when the ESX server holding the appliance is not reachable and has no HA configured. In that case, you would have an outage. Now, Manish, I'm happy to give you more a longer visibility, more visibility into all the availability mechanisms that are out there. So let's just say it's architected to withstand failures. So the appliance itself is disposable. The source of truth and the critical systems here are really the OpenStack control plane, which are managed and backed up and highly available by the Platform9 service, and the vCenter layer itself, which you better have good availability for. The appliance can come and go. It can literally come and go. If the appliance is unavailable, then operations may temporarily fail, but when it comes back up again, then the system would reconcile back into the exact same state because of the metadata-based design. The appliance itself doesn't have any persistent data that's critical. Hari had a question, can we Dockerize these VMs which are being used as tenants? Hari, the answer is yes. Again, I can give you more insights offline. It's a longer conversation, but the short answer is yes. These applications that you're trying to deploy can be Dockerized containers. That's actually in the labs. If you see our website, if you go look at the product page for Docker, it'll give you a sense for what are the problems that we're solving with Docker integration. Again, would love to have a conversation with you. Manish had the question, how did the new gateway get deployed, automatic or manual? So the gateway gets deployed. I showed you the sequence. You have to download the gateway and deploy it into your environment. That's how you deploy the gateway. We'll come back into NSX. I know we are running a little short of time, folks, but keep those questions coming. And I know we have Ken and Amrish on the call to help with that. So I want to talk about 2 or 3 features which I think are really critical and factors that you want to take into account when you're integrating vSphere with an orchestration layer, whether that be OpenStack or any other orchestration layer. One concern that I think you should definitely be accounting for is how interoperable is it, right? So with Platform9's architecture, suppose you had an outage on your infrastructure and you had to vMotion VMs manually or perform some such operations across clusters, resize clusters. You had to move VMs around in a way that you didn't expect to. The architecture is such that that metadata gets queried from the vCenter API and it gets reconciled into the OpenStack layer. So this metadata gets queried for clusters, for data stores, for port groups, for templates, for VMs, and it's refreshed every 5 minutes on an average. Some operations refresh faster than others. What that means is, from a customer point of view, you can get started with an existing environment that you already have, and I just showed that to you live. And the other and more important point, I think, is there is no restriction on what vSphere operations you can perform, as opposed to, I think, if you had an orchestration layer on top, even if that's OpenStack or any other layer, where that layer was now making assumptions about what the state of your vSphere environment was, that a VM was on a certain cluster and cannot move, then I think it puts in place restrictions on what you can perform without breaking that orchestration layer on top. So I know there's a few questions around networking, and I want to take those questions now. And folks, please keep the questions coming. I know Ken and Amrish are online and helping to answer, but I will take as many questions as we can. So the compatibility for storage and network, because Platform9 integrates purely via the vCenter API, the storage that we see is the storage that is available through the vCenter API. So any vCenter compatible storage is compatible with Platform9. And likewise on networks, and this is really important, I think with OpenStack networking, there's a lot of power and potential with the range of networking options that OpenStack can support. But conversely, it's also an area of complexity because many customers struggle with understanding how do we implement network integration with OpenStack. And what we've done is we've said any vSwitch or ESX compatible, vSphere compatible networking technology gets registered and discovered as an OpenStack network. And that means that it's compatible out of the box with traditional VLAN based networks, with whether you're using DVS or not, compatible with NSX, because those networks ultimately show up in vSphere as well. But there is deeper integration, which I would call the network virtualization or software-defined network integration, where you have the ability to provision these networks dynamically via OpenStack and do things like private networking and fence networks and floating IPs. Not only NSX, we're also working on integration with Cisco APIC. We do have customers who are using both. We think they're phenomenal tools both, and we want to support both. So that's on the compatibility. To recap, it's compatible with anything that already works with vSphere as storage and network solution, and more advanced integration with software-defined networking is being worked on as we speak. I want to talk about scale, and I want to end my portion of the talk with a little demo on scale-out pattern automation. So the OpenStack controller services are managed by Platform9, are deployed as a SaaS model. So we can scale the controller behind the scenes as needed. Our customers don't have to deal with OpenStack scale. The vSphere gateway itself is deployed on a per vCenter server basis. So it's one vCenter server per gateway today. It's very easy for us to support all kinds of arrangements such as redundancy, multiple gateways per vCenter, single gateway for multiple vCenters. But right now, if you have multiple vCenters, we would be supporting them with multiple gateways, and it's not rocket science. The gateway, as I mentioned earlier, is stateless, disposable, lightweight, doesn't take any resources at all. So the truth and the source of data is really the OpenStack control plane and the vSphere layer itself. I want to talk about a scale-out automation use case that's very, very common. As applications are increasingly moving to a scale-out pattern, you need to have considerations for how VMs get placed, how is that automated based on workload tiers and capacity. And I think that's something that we will run a more detailed webinar on later, but I showed you the host aggregates feature where you can define tiers of infrastructure and place VMs onto that. The other thing I want to talk about is application sizing, horizontal scaling of application using something like CloudFormations. Amazon CloudFormations is essentially OpenStack Heat. So you can scale up based on VM resource utilization and scale down. Again, we're going to do a dedicated webinar on this topic, but I want to show you a very quick demo of what's possible. And I'm going to run through this very quickly because we only have so much time today. But essentially, we're going to deploy a scale-out application template. That template is actually an OpenStack Heat compatible template for WordPress, which contains the auto-scaling YAML is actually something that we can make available to you if you're interested. It's available on the public domain. When you deploy it through the command line, this template is asking for 3 worker nodes to be deployed. 2 of them are worker nodes, and 1 of them is a front-end HA proxy load balancer. And this is a WordPress application stack using Heat that is being deployed. And if you look at it, those are all being deployed onto your vSphere environment underneath. They come back up with an IP address, and you should be able to go back into the Heat application stack and look at what does that look from a Heat view. And you see there's 2 worker nodes, and there's 1 front-end IP. So if you go into the front-end IP address, you should be able to see WordPress running at that server. Now let's simulate a high-stress scenario where the application the stack now needs to be scaled horizontally. So in this demo, Amrish has brought up a stress driver, a load driver that's going to pound WordPress, and that's going to cause WordPress to get unresponsive. It's going to cause the utilization to go up. So we're actually going to bring up Ceilometer and look at some of the CPU utilization alarms there. And so you can see there's 2 alarms in that application stack, which is a high alarm and a low alarm. The high alarm triggers if the utilization exceeds 50% for a full minute. The low alarm triggers if the utilization drops below 15% for a full minute. And after having launched that stress test suite, you'll essentially see the utilization start to climb. Very soon you'll see the utilization is now exceeding 50%. And what that's going to do is it's going to essentially cause that alarm to get triggered eventually. And you see that the Ceilometer alarm will eventually get hit. And that application stack says that when the Ceilometer high alarm gets hit, automatically scale out the application by bringing on 1 more worker node, right? And that's exactly what's happening over here. There's 1 more worker node that was automatically provisioned by OpenStack Heat. Now, for those of you familiar with Amazon Web Services, this is bread and butter, right? This is CloudFormations, auto-scaling. It's always been possible. What's great about what I'm showing you here is that all of this is now possible using very consistent APIs that are instantly familiar to anyone who's used Amazon. And all of this is happening on top of your vSphere environment. With your existing vSphere environment, you could be having all of this today. So if you kill the stress test suite, eventually you'll actually see the reverse happen, right? You'll see that the CPU utilization will drop, and that CPU utilization would drop to the point where the low alarm gets hit. It goes below 15%, and that in turn will cause 1 of the worker nodes to be automatically deleted, removed from the load balancer configuration. And there you see. So if you go back and look at the Heat application stack, you'll see that it's now back down to 2 worker nodes as opposed to 3 worker nodes earlier. And if you go into vSphere, you'll be able to see that there was a VM delete operation that OpenStack essentially orchestrated for you. So it's a very quick demo, but I think it points to the potential for being able to better orchestrate and automate vSphere using OpenStack and all of the possibilities that enables. So that was my section. I know there's lots of questions, and I love, thank you for being so interactive. I do want to talk about 2 things and then take more questions. Essentially, if you've seen what Platform9 has done, we haven't locked our customers from a compatibility point of view. It's compatible with any hypervisor of your choice. We fully support now both KVM and vSphere, and Docker support is in the works. It's hardware agnostic. It supports any storage and network that you have. Okay, it's all based on OpenStack APIs, right? It's the open source standard, right? We don't make up those APIs. It's one stable, well-defined API that's managed by a community. And at the same time, we made this really simple. You saw how simple it is to go from having a vSphere environment to being able to have your own internal private cloud orchestration automation layer with your servers that already exist for your users that want it today. So that's essentially the value proposition that we have. It's now available for vSphere. It's very simple, lightweight. it's 100% interoperable. And to our knowledge, it's the only OpenStack integration with vSphere that doesn't limit vSphere functionality in any way, which we think is very important from a IT operations point of view. And it's very compatible and lets you streamline application provisioning while integrating it very easily into your vSphere environment. So I do want to launch one more poll, and then I'll just wrap through a couple of logistics and take more questions. Again, I'd love to have your feedback on how you think this actually is useful in your environment. So if you can take a few minutes, folks, I would greatly appreciate you sharing your feedback on, having seen this presentation, how would OpenStack be useful to you? What are the use cases that resonate with what you want to do, or what do you view as important versus not being important? And I'd love that feedback. So thank you for everyone who's voted. We are almost at 40% voted already, and now almost at 50. Again, thank you everyone who's voting. I'll pull the poll in about 20 seconds, but just want to hear your thoughts on what are the reasons, what are the use cases that OpenStack should focus on in terms of adding value to an existing vSphere environment. So just a quick sneak peek to the audience. My thank you for having voted. The leading one is the self-service portal. 80% respondents like the self-service portal, and 2/3 like the multi-platform and the streamlined VM provisioning aspect. Nearly 3/4 of you have voted. I'm going to pull the poll very soon. And while that's happening, let me actually take a couple of questions. David Stammen has a question on APIC support. David, send us a note offline. It's actually, we're working very closely with Cisco. Send us a note. We may be able to work on that together for you with Cisco. We are working with some customers who are very committed to APIC. And will the ACI support be through the group-based policy or Neutron? And that is actually something I am embarrassed to admit I don't know the answer to at this point. David, I don't want to give you an incorrect answer. So, I know Madhura, who's our VP product, would be able to tell you that right away. So if you send us a note offline, I think we can tell you exactly how that support is being done. And my apologies, I don't know the answer off the top of my head. Mayank has a question. Is vSphere's all features show up in the Horizon dashboard? So Mayank, vSphere has a different feature set. Like, so you wouldn't see features such as the ability to do HA and storage vMotion VMs and storage IO controls in the Horizon UI. I think you want to use OpenStack for the things that OpenStack is good at, and use vSphere for the things that vSphere is good at. And what we're saying is these are now completely interoperable. You can use vSphere as the underlying operational layer. We're also looking at saying that here's how there's no restrictions in terms of what you can do with vSphere when you're using with OpenStack. But I really think you want to use OpenStack for what OpenStack is good at, which is that self-service, streamlined provisioning, automation, rapid provisioning, accelerating development. I don't think you want to use OpenStack, in my opinion, I don't think you want to use OpenStack to replace the things that vSphere is very good at. Steve, what is the cost model? Do we have a paying customer there, Steve? Send us a note. Look, I think just you can sign up and ask for your own account today. Just ask for the Fast Pass today. Just tell them you saw the webinar, so you already ramped up and you know a little bit more about the product. So you want the Fast Pass, and Steve, happy to share that information. We have a starter tier, which is a very small token payment. And we have an enterprise tier, which is very, very attractively priced considering the all-in cost of running your private cloud and powering and providing that SLA. Love the question. I look forward to working with you. Yeah, I'm smiling too, Steve, not just you. So Amrish, David, you had a question on how is the integration model through group-based policy? And Amrish had an answer for you. It is actually, we're looking at integrating with Neutron first, not based on group-based policy. But I think we'd probably want to have a conversation with you and understand how you perceive the differences. The way we see it is being aligned with the open source API standards is better for customers, and it's better for vendors as well because it's more interoperable. Essentially, you now have OpenStack becoming the interconnect in the data center. So I think it's something that we'd love to discuss, but it's being done with the Neutron to answer your question. So again, folks, thank you so much for taking your time. If you want your jackets, send us a note. If you If you want your trial account, if you think this is useful to your organization, we'd love to work with you. Sign up and ask for your FastPass. Stay in touch. Follow us at Platform9 Sys. Follow our Twitter group or on LinkedIn. Send us an email. Send us your thoughts in terms of what you'd like to see or some missing pieces or any questions you may have. Connect at platform9.com. And here's some webinars that are coming up. I know there were some webinars that we discussed today around placement automation, network integration. Those are also coming up, but these are the next 3 that are coming up. Manish is asking for access for vExperts. Manish, I'll give you the answer offline. We are doing something for the community. We definitely want to enable every vExpert to have access to Platform9. So yes, the short answer is yes. So again, just a quick recap of the upcoming webinars. If this is interesting to you, the next one that I think Ken is planning to run is on the 10th of September. How do you compare different distributions, OpenStack distributions, in terms of their support for VMware vSphere? We have one coming up in terms of use cases and integration scenarios, storage automation scenarios with OpenStack Cinder in the 3rd week of September. And in early October, we're planning one around how OpenStack, comparing and contrasting OpenStack with vRealize Automation Center. I know a lot of you have been deploying vRealize Automation Center, so happy to give you some more visibility into that. Again, folks, thank you for all of you who spent your time today. And if you have any questions, we're available. We're going to keep the bridge open for 5-10 minutes more. Happy to take more questions. So Manish had a question on any roadmap on vRealize Automation Center or vRealize Operations Center integration. And the answer, Manish, there is that it's OpenStack API compatible, so it should already be compatible, but would love to hear more on your thoughts on how that should be done. Steve, very informative, thank you, and love to see the upcoming vRealize stack up. I think that's something we're excited about contrasting as well, and we will definitely be sharing that. Thank you for the feedback. Mayank had a question, will this integrate with existing hypervisors in customer setup and give the Platform9 dashboard? The answer is yes. So what I just showed you live was actually how it integrates with any existing environment. And that's something that we think is important, especially for a VMware customer base, because many VMware customers often have large existing deployments that they don't want to necessarily throw away. They may want to start small with Platform9 or with OpenStack and give it 1 or 2 small clusters, some templates that already exist, but they don't necessarily want to go and rebuild a whole new environment from scratch. And so the answer is absolutely yes. Again, so we're going to be at VMworld. Steve, that's a great question. We are going to be at VMworld booth 339. Come find us, say hello in person, pick up your swag, and I look forward to seeing many of you there. I know Kenneth is going to be there. I know Amrish is going to be there. I'll be there in and around meetings around Moscone. So look forward to meeting you in person as well. Again, for everyone who asked questions, thank you for coming in. Thank you for taking your time and for participating and making this so interactive today. This has definitely been our most interactive and busy webinar. I will definitely look forward to meeting many of you in person. And will we be at VMworld Europe? Stephen, we haven't registered for VMworld Europe yet, but we were going to be, we can talk, send us a note. Would love to hear your thoughts. Would definitely like to meet up in person. We do have partners in Europe who are essentially distributors and channel for Platform9 who can help you right away, but we are also thinking about VMworld Europe. Manish had a question on vRealize Operations Center. Manish, I don't have an answer for you off the top of my head. I don't know. I don't think we would necessarily do specific integration with vRealize Operations Center. We're all OpenStack API compatible, so I think we need to look into how well does Vero integrate with OpenStack APIs and does it leverage that? So that's my quick answer, but I'd love to hear more thoughts on that. So Manish is clarifying that's about VCO. It's vCenter Orchestrator. That's a great point, Manish. So on vCenter Orchestrator, we think that you can use vCenter Orchestrator. There's ways by which you can integrate that with Platform9. For example, you can have scripts that are driven by vCenter Orchestrator and package them in a way that integrates with the OpenStack provisioning process. But what we're seeing is that a lot of customers and the automation skill set that exists is familiar with the Amazon Cloud Formations model. and where that's the orchestration technology that seems to be most popular in the virtualization space, more than vCenter Orchestrator. And OpenStack Heat essentially has that kind of model. It has one which is not API compatible, but it also has an API compatible version that attempts to be more consistent with the CloudFormation's API literally. So that's, I think, the orchestration paradigm that we think is the way forward, because it's how Amazon and OpenStack and the larger ecosystem is doing, as opposed to vCenter Orchestrator, which is very proprietary to VMware. But that's my quick answer. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, and I'm sure Kenneth may have some thoughts on that as well. Again, folks, thank you so much for taking your time today, and it was great talking to you. I look forward to seeing you in person at VMworld or on one of our future webinars. We're going to keep the call open for those of you who may have any more questions. But again, thank you for taking the time to connect. So Mayank had a question: is there a supported KVM ESXi version list, or any version is good to go? So Mayank, there is a wide range of support. So vSphere support is 5.x and above. Excuse me. And KVM is essentially CentOS or Red Hat 6.5 and newer, and Ubuntu 12.04 and newer. So, and the prerequisites, if you go to the website and the platform product pages on those platforms, you'll see some of the details there. But it's most commonly used versions of Linux and commonly used versions of vSphere are compatible. Again, folks, thank you so much. This was definitely a very fun and interactive webinar. I thank you all for taking the time. I hope you have a great evening or great day, depending on where you are. And I look forward to seeing you in person. We'll be hanging up the bridge in a couple of minutes, but if you have any questions, tweet us, email us, or ask us while the bridge is open. And I look forward to hearing that from you. Thank you, Manish. Thank you, Mayank. Thank you, David. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Stephen. All the people who asked questions. My personal thanks. You contributed and helped make the conversation more interesting. And again, thank you, folks. Great connecting, and we'll see you at our next webinar or at VMworld in a couple of weeks. Okay? Thank you.